So you've decided to go to a munch, and you watched my last video, so you have a good idea of what to expect. But here are some general guidelines to help you get through the experience. Hey guys, it's Morgan with BDSM Relationships and Education. Thank you very much for checking out this video, and I'd like to remind you just to subscribe if you haven't done so already. We are working towards 1,500 subscribers so that we can do another giveaway, because it turns out it's a lot of fun to give stuff away. So help me get there, and then you guys can win cool stuff. Anyways, we are going to talk today about some sort of, I don't want to call them rules, because they certainly are not rules when it comes to munches, but they are more like guidelines. Things that you should be aware of to kind of help you through the experience. And if you prefer to read the article as opposed to listen to me talk, I'm going to link the article on my website, either up here and in the description box below. So the first piece of advice I have is to check the rules of the actual munch you're planning on attending. Munches will have different rules depending on what type of munch it is. So they may have restrictions on age or gender or orientation, things like that. And when I say orientation, I mean like dominant, submissive, not straight, gay, whatever. So I've been to munches that were dominance only. I've been to other munches that were the TNG variety, so the under 35 munches. I've been to femdom munches, so you could only go if you were a female dominant or a submissive of whatever gender. So there's going to be differences there, and you need to make sure that you are abiding by the rules, because, you know, once we are, say, over 35, we can't exactly walk into the under 35 munch and expect to be welcomed. It's kind of rude. They've set their boundaries, and we need to respect those boundaries. The other thing is that you do not wear fetish gear or obvious signs of kink when you are going to a munch. This is just an outing at a vanilla restaurant or pub or wherever. So it is, you know, it's supposed to be a vanilla event. It is not a kink party. Nothing sexy is going to happen there unless you think talking about, you know, the weather or whatever is sexy. Because, I mean, you know, to each their own. But, you know, this is not a play party. This is going to be just, you know, hanging out with friends. So you don't want to show up in, you know, your latex outfit or your gimp mask or whatever it is. So don't wear fetish wear. People will sometimes wear subtle signs of their kink. So, I mean, I've seen like little handcuff earrings or a small necklace that has like a lock on it, or things like that that, you know, you would wear in regular vanilla society without issue. So just be aware of that. Usually pictures and cameras are, you know, discouraged, if not forbidden. If you do really need to take a picture, I would check with the munch host before doing so, and make sure that you are away from the group and that nobody is in the background of your picture that doesn't want to be. Usually, if I really want to take a picture while I'm at a munch, say like just a selfie with a friend to post on social media or whatever, I will, you know, go outside of the munch or just, you know, step away from the group so that we can get a photo and then go back, because it's rude to take pictures. People don't know what you're taking a picture of. And some people have sensitive jobs or things like that where they can't, you know, expose their interest in kink, and you could inadvertently out somebody. And we're not even going to get into the people that do it maliciously. That's another thing entirely. But, you know, you don't want to accidentally post a picture that has somebody in the background that could lose, you know, their job because they're kinky or whatever. So cameras and pictures are not generally allowed. I mean, the camera thing is really hard to regulate now because everyone has a camera phone. You know, back when I first started attending munches and running parties and stuff, like, you actually had to have a camera. So it was much easier to control these things. Nowadays, it's a little less so, but just, you know, use your common sense and don't be a jerk. Often munches will have like a little name tag, so you can fill out your name tag and you can put whatever feels comfortable on the name tag. So you can use your real name, you can use a pseudonym, you can use your FetLife name, but I generally try to tell people, like, make sure it's not something really crass. But if your FetLife name is something really like crass or just rude in general, you know, like something referencing genitalia or, you know, something like that, then it's probably not the best thing to put on your name tag. So if your name on FetLife is love to suck cock or whatever, I don't know, I'm just like top of my head here, some of the crass names that I've seen, that's not going to look appropriate on your name tag. Now, the other thing is that the waitresses at a lot of, or waiters at a lot of the Munches that I've attended will use our name tags to run a tab. So when I order drinks or whatever, they just put it under, you know, oh, okay, Morgan, here we go. And then at the end of the night, I go to pay my bill and I'm like, my name is Morgan. I'd like to pay my bill. And they give me my bill and then I pay it. So again, if you are, you know, Lord Hugecock on FetLife, then that's going to be really awkward for the waitress. You know, she's going to be like, oh, that's what I have to write down. You know, and it's just not appropriate, or the waiter or whomever. It's really not appropriate, and it's kind of like, it's just kind of being a jerk. So don't put if your FetLife name is something like that, I'd highly suggest you change it because people aren't going to take you seriously anyways. We'll talk about that some other time. But, you know, don't put that on your name tag if that's, you know, your FetLife name, because people aren't going to feel comfortable talking to you or using that name for you. So just use your common sense. And I know that can be really hard for some people sometimes, but please, I'm begging you, use common sense. Always use the name that people have written on their name tags, even if, like, say you know somebody's real name or whatever, but they say their real name is Joe, but on their name tag they have Brad. So you don't know why they maybe have a different name, but call them Brad. That's what they want to be called. Call them that. You know, use the name that's on the name tag. Don't, you know, use their legal name just because you know it, because you think it makes you cool or whatever. I mean, I've had people do that before I changed my name. I have never really I've never felt comfortable with my legal name. So, which is why I've changed my name. But there was a time period where I was still known as Morgan, but I had my other name and people knew that name sometimes. So they would like insist on calling me that, which first of all, it was a safety issue for me because I was working as a pro dom and I didn't want people to be able to find me through my real legal name. Also, I hate that name. It just doesn't connect with me. And it holds a lot of really bad memories and everything else for me. And I just didn't want to be known by that name. I wanted to be known as Morgan. Like, it's not as if I was asking people to call me, you know, Lord Giant Cock or whatever. Like, this is a real name. And that was what I wanted to be known as. And it was really upsetting that people didn't respect my boundaries and didn't respect, you know, me in general, and insisted on spreading around my, you know, former name. So that was a real problem. So don't be that person. You know, don't make somebody feel shitty like that. There's a lot of reasons why people change their names or aren't using their legal name at a munch. And it could be, you know, a situation like mine where, you know, you are going through a name change process. Or it could be somebody that, you know, is trans and you're calling them by their dead name, or however you want to phrase that. It could be just they're trying to respect their own privacy and not have everybody know their legal name. So for whatever reason, those are all absolutely valid reasons. Every reason that somebody has for using a nickname or a pseudonym in place of their legal name is absolutely valid, and we should respect that. So just make sure that you are respecting it. Again, don't be that jerk. Generally, the use of titles and stuff like that is frowned upon unless you're already in a relationship with somebody. So that goes both ways. So that means that I'm not going to walk up to various people in the munch and start calling everybody that is, you know, a submissive or a slave or a bottom slave, right? That's just not how I'm going to address them. Just like I'm really not going to appreciate it if people come up to me and start calling me mistress. It's not cool. It's not on my name tag. It doesn't say Mistress Morgan on my name tag. It just says Morgan. That's what I want people to call me, Morgan. So when people start using titles and things like that with me, it really makes me uncomfortable. And I know that I'm certainly not the only person A huge amount of dominant women that I've talked to feel the same way. There are some that prefer, titles and names and stuff like that, and they'll tell you. Usually it'll either say on their name tag or they will tell you verbally. And then it's your choice as to whether you're going to use it or not. Because personally, I'm not a big fan of calling other people master or mistress or whatever title they want. It just doesn't seem right to me. I mean, sometimes I know the person well. There's one individual that I can think of, and he uses master as part of his name, and that's fine, and I respect him, and I don't have a problem using that for him. But when it's just some random person walking up to me and then demanding these titles, that sort of rubs me the wrong way, and I know that I'm not alone in this. A lot of people feel the same way. So I mean, really think about it. If it's really, really important to you that you have master or mistress or whatever on your name tag, then I mean, go for it. You have to do you, but understand that a lot of people will kind of be put off by it. And I think that would actually be a good thing for a future video to talk about sort of the use of titles and people's reactions to them and that sort of thing. So I'm really curious, how do you guys react to people that give themselves these titles and then insist that other people use these titles for them? How do you feel about that? Are you comfortable calling other people master or mistress, even though you're not in a relationship with them? And I mean, I don't want to limit it to just master or mistress. I mean, like slave or kijara or whatever. I mean, like there's a lot of different titles out there. So I'm curious what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below, and we can have a discussion about that and maybe a future video. We'll see. So also don't assume roles, right? Don't walk up to me and assume that because of, the way I look or whatever, that I must be dominant. And don't walk up to me and assume that because of my gender, I must be submissive. And I'm just using those as examples, but I mean, with anybody, it's the same thing. Don't make assumptions about what roles people have, because they might surprise you. And it's just kind of an asshole thing to do anyways. So, I mean, there's lots of people that you would walk up to. I think often my boyfriend, people see him, he's a big guy, he's muscular, he holds himself well, and people make assumptions that he must be a dominant. And it's like, no, he's not, and that's okay, but you shouldn't make those assumptions, So, just don't make assumptions about people's roles. And if you're curious, because, maybe they're hot and you want to see if they're, complementary role to yours, ask, right? Nobody's going to, it's a munch. Nobody's going to look at you sideways if you're like, oh, what role do you prefer? It's totally normal. On that one, also don't assume people's genders, right? I'm going to have a video very soon about gender identity within kink. So that will be, I'll link it when it's up, but, gender is also one of those things that you just cannot make assumptions about. So if you are unsure of somebody's gender, you can always ask, what are your pronouns? How they identify gender-wise is really none of our business. But if we want to know how to address them and things like that, we could say, what are your pronouns? And they'll say, oh, I go by her or him or they or whatever. And it's not a rude question. I know that can sometimes feel like a rude question. Saying, oh, what gender are you is rude. But what are your pronouns is not rude, because that's just, how would you prefer to be addressed? It's the same kind of question. So it's really important to remember that munches are not meat markets. This is not, where you go to pick up a slave or a mistress or whatever. Munches are just for people to get together, kinky people to hang out, chat, make friends, that sort of thing. I mean, often, yes, you will meet people that you may be interested in playing with or dating or whatever. I mean, it's just like any other gathering of people. That is certainly possible. But if you go with the attitude that I am here because I need to find this type of person and this gender and whatever, and I'm not going to talk to anybody else but my ideal partner, then it's going to be really obvious why you're there for. Like, we can tell that you're like on the hunt or whatever. And it's rude and it's kind of shitty, right? For a couple of reasons. First of all, because you're not going to make any friends that way. Nobody's going to be impressed with it. But also, if you make friends with me and I'm not your type, but I have friends that might be your type. So if you kind of make friends with me, then maybe if you are looking for, you know, a submissive or a slave, I have lots of friends that fall into that role. Or if you're looking for, you know, a male master, that's cool too, because I have lots of friends that fall into that role. Because I have lots of friends within the kink community, and we talk to each other and that sort of stuff. So, you know, just keep that in mind that, you know, you're there to make friends. You're not there to, you know, get laid or score a partner or whatever. So just take that attitude, you know, that I'm here to meet people and have fun and make friends, and that's it. Oh yeah, so really, really, really important. Pay your bill before you leave. And like, this seems really obvious, right? But sometimes, you know, it's a munch and it's kind of exciting and it can be overwhelming and there's so much going on, and then it's time to go and you just kind of leave and you forget that you had, you know, 5 beers and a meal and whatever. And if you don't pay your bill, that means that the munch host needs to pay it for you. And that sucks. You know, like, that is it's a really shitty thing to do to people. Because, you know, that can be a lot of money. And if you're not the only person who forgot, if there's 3 or 4 people who forgot, that very quickly adds up. And then they have to come and figure out who didn't pay their bill, and they have to chase you down and get the money and all that kind of stuff. So don't be that person. Like, it's really shitty. So, you know, you can go to a munch if you don't have a lot of money. You just have to, like, order a pop. Or, I mean, some people just go and they just ask for a glass of water and that's all they have, you know. And because it's a big group of people and other people are spending money, the restaurant will usually look the other way that, you know, one person isn't paying money. So, you know, you can do that sort of thing. So if money is an issue, don't feel that you can't go to a munch. Just go and buy something small, or, you know, have water, whatever. So I kind of touched on this before. Munches are all different, right? So if you don't like one group, then try a different group, because the groups of people might be different, or the theme might be different, or whatever. You know, not everybody is going to get along with everyone, so not every group of people are going to click. So just keep trying until you find a group that you enjoy. If you are feeling nervous or anything before going, you can always message the organizer ahead of time, and often they will offer to introduce you around or meet up with you a few minutes early, or that sort of thing. They'll chat with you through messages just to make you feel a little more comfortable. So don't worry about that. If you are nervous, this is a normal thing. We expect people to message us asking about, you know, the munch, or can you introduce me to people, or whatever. But don't treat this person like a matchmaker. Don't say, well, I need you to introduce me to all of the hot people of this gender and orientation that I'm interested in, right? Because then I'm not going to do that, and most people aren't. But if you just say, hey, you know, like, this is who I am and I'm interested in meeting others. I haven't been to a munch before. Would you mind introducing me around? Most organizers are going to say yes, absolutely. So choose a munch that works for you, you know, whether it's you feel comfortable in a big crowd, because there are munches that are like 50 or 100 or more people. So if you are comfortable in a big crowd, then that might be the perfect munch for you. But if you are nervous and you don't like big crowds like that, then that munch isn't going to be for you, at least not in the beginning. So choose a munch that is smaller. There are some munches that are like, you know, 5 or 10 people. So it's a much smaller group. Usually those are a little more specialized. So like when I was doing the disability munch, sometimes we only had a handful of people. Other times we'd have like maybe 20 people, but we never had more than that. There was always a fairly small group. So you can, you know, again, if you message the organizer, ask, what is your typical turnout? What should I expect? That sort of thing. Just talk to everybody there too. And this touches on the not a meat market, don't be on the hunt, but talk to everyone, because you never know who's going to be able to introduce you to somebody, or who's going to be an awesome friend or whatever. Just, you know, try to talk to as many people as possible, and you will probably find somebody that you really get along with as a friend, or you want to date or whatever. But just, you know, be social, have fun. So I did mention when we talked about what to wear that this is vanilla, but you need to also act in a way that's appropriate for vanilla society. So often people will cite the grandmother rule, right? So you wouldn't wear anything that you wouldn't wear to your grandma's house. You wouldn't talk about stuff that you wouldn't talk about in front of your grandma. I don't think that it needs to go quite that far. I often have discussions about sex and kink and stuff like that at munches. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh yeah, no, we always just talk about the weather or whatever. Usually at any of the munches that I've been to, we talk about kink. I mean, that's not to say that all of them are going to be like that. Some of them may be more vanilla oriented. It really depends on the group, but you need to act appropriately. So this means, you know, not shouting at the top of your lungs about fucking someone in the ass. And it also means, you know, censoring your conversations when the wait staff are nearby. And it means that you don't go and try to act dominant or act submissive or whatever is in your head. So like if you show up at the munch and you start prostrating yourself on the ground in front of everybody that you think might be a dominant, you're going to kind of look like an idiot and you're probably going to get asked to leave because that's totally inappropriate. Just like if I put on my very best pair of leather pants and walk around ordering people around and acting like a total cunt, they're probably going to ask me to leave too because, well, it's just not cool to do that. Also, my leather pants don't fit anymore. Always remember too, and like I said, we're going to do a video about gender identity, but kinky people don't always fit into that really strict male-female binary. A lot of us have different gender expressions. So you should expect to see that, and you should have an open mind about it. Again, if you aren't sure, ask what are your pronouns. But just know that people will have different gender expressions. Now, everybody is going to make mistakes. This is part of being human. Sometimes it can be a pain in the ass, and we hate making mistakes, but it's going to happen inevitably. So if you do make a mistake at a munch, and it's your first time or your 50th time, it doesn't really matter. The way to deal with that is to apologize, to acknowledge that you've made a mistake, and say you're sorry. That's really important I think that's an important life lesson. But understand you've made a mistake. Ask how, you can do better in the future. Do your best to make amends, whether that's simply an apology or whatever that is. And sometimes if you've made a mistake against a person, they're not necessarily going to want to talk to you, but you should at least make the effort. Don't hound them. They don't owe you forgiveness, but make the effort to apologize and make amends. But, try to be graceful and move on and do better in the future. That shows, the strength of your character. I hate seeing these people who are like, oh, apologizing is admitting weakness or whatever. Guess what? We all make mistakes. And I think that the people who can acknowledge that and, say they're sorry and do better in the future, I think that they have a much stronger character than those who just arrogantly refuse to apologize for anything. So if you do make a mistake, apologize, do your best to make amends, and move on and do better in the future. Very, very important. And finally, this one is, I think this would actually be a rule. Like I said, I like to have guidelines, not rules, but this one is pretty straightforward and ironclad. Do not touch people or their things without permission. The kink community is very, very strict about this. We do not like touching people without consent in any way. So this means don't touch, grab them in a sexual way, obviously, but don't hug people without asking. Don't, whatever. You can offer your hand for a handshake, but that's a question in and of itself. Will you shake my hand kind of thing? And then they can take your hand or not. But just be aware that we do not touch people without permission. You always need to get consent. And it's one of the things that I really love about the kink community is that we do have that emphasis on consent like that. So just remember, it's really, really important. And I saved that one for last because that way I know who watched the whole video. No, I'm just joking. But it is, to me, the only actual rule out of all of these things you absolutely have to follow every time. Do not touch people without consent. Anyways, guys, thank you very much. This ended up being a little longer than I had anticipated, but I like to talk. So thanks very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed my video. Give me a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.